Welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. Brought to you by Elite Consulting Partners, it's the only podcast offering unfiltered guidance and direct advice for all things concerning financial advisors, RIAs, and the practitioners in the wealth management business. Learn more and subscribe today at eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcast. And now, here's your host, Frank LaRosa.
So here we go. We're going to go live. I think we're live now, but I'm going to introduce someone that's become a good friend. Sometimes eerily have a lot more in common than we think, and we're always finding more and more in common. So it's been an interesting journey and friendship. But Jon Kuttin, you all have heard me talk about him over and over again. I'm probably tired of hearing me talk about him. What an amazing business he has built over the years, Kuttin Wealth Management. And so we're going to do a podcast today, and it's really just to learn about Jon, learn about Kuttin Wealth Management, what separates them from basically the pack and everybody else, so that you all understand the types of advisors and the value that Kuttin Wealth Management can bring to one or more and many of your clients. And so we thought this format would be really fun and interesting. Jon is used to being on stage because he is top, he was just at the Barron's. You're the top 100 Barron's advisors. You're number one I think you're number one in New York State. Sir. Right? So he'll get into some of that, but it's, you're going to hear from somebody that has done everything. His practice is bigger than some of the independent broker-dealers that we've heard from this week, to give you some context, okay? So we're going to do 45 minutes, 43 minutes, and then we're going to stop. And then we're going to just get into a private. We're going to not go live anymore. We're going to go into just a private Q&A so we can really roll up our sleeves and get in behind the scenes and understand Kuttin Wealth Management and Jon and his team a lot better. So here we go. Are we ready?
I am ready. Thanks, Frank, for the kind words, and happy to be here. Who's this guy he's talking about? I don't know. Seems like an interesting cat. So first, I'm struggling with terrible allergies. So for the New Jersey, New York people here, Pennsylvania people, allergies are bad. So I'm hoping I don't have so the bouquet right next to you is perfect. I feel the pollen coming on me.
Put it in your lap.
Let me start with, I think what Elite Consulting Partners is doing here is just really cool. I mean, when you really think about it, for the folks listening in, this was a 3-day session to learn about very successful independent wealth management firms and other options inside of the ecosystem, so that all of the consultants that are part of Elite Consulting Partners can actually do their diligence to help advisors make the best decision. So as I've been observing and meeting everybody here, I just wanted to share that with you, Frank. It's really, to our listeners, a cool thing to be able to say these folks truly take their job as matchmakers, and their job is to help you as the advisor ultimately find the best destination for your clients, for yourself personally, and for your team as well. So kudos to you, Frank.
I appreciate that. So why don't we just jump right into it, right? I gave a little bit of an introduction, but why don't you talk to the audience, and again, the audience in the room, for those of you that are joining us and listening to our podcast. We also have a YouTube channel, which is Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa on YouTube. And if you're watching, we don't normally do it on a stage like this. It's not as grandiose as this, but we have two guys here. We needed a bigger room. Generally, when we're in the room together, we need a bigger room. We might have some egos, but that's good.
Usually a little bigger room and maybe a little bit more airtime, right? We both are not at a shortage of words.
A little bit more airtime. So our biggest challenge whenever Jon and I are talking is, do we have enough time? But anyway, so if you're joining us, behind the cameras are 60 other professionals that work for Elite Consulting Partners as consultants that help financial advisors find the right next home for their practice. So we're honored to have Jon here. So Jon, why don't you talk just higher level, right? What was your background, and how did you tell us more about Jon Kuttin and then Kuttin Wealth Management, and then we'll just go from there.
Sure. So I tell this story a lot. So I was started as a small boy. No, just kidding. The best way I could describe it is, I heard when I first started in my career as a financial advisor that a great financial advisor has the heart of a social worker and the mind of a capitalist. So when I was 20, I found out that my mom and dad actually claimed bankruptcy. And I was having a good time. I played college soccer. I was enjoying my life. I was in a fraternity thinking life was great. And that was a wake-up call for me. And that helped me actually kind of get my career on track and start to think about the future. And in 1993, I interned for a small company called IDS Financial Services, which went on to become American Express Financial Advisors, which today, of course, is Ameriprise. And I've sat in the same seat for just about 30 years. So I will have been with the same firm for 30 years come this November in actuality. So it's been a minute. I've been in the same seat. But what's interesting is we've done a ton of recruiting. I've actually been part of consulting businesses that have helped with mergers and acquisitions and recruiting over the years. So I've been able to get a really good understanding of the landscape and what actually goes on inside of the financial planning industry. So today, fast forward, I started as a traditional advisor, cold called my way to build my business, got involved in leadership, which in my opinion was the single best decision. At the time, it didn't feel like it because of bureaucracy and things along those lines. But the mentorship and the learnings that I was able to get from other great leaders was unbelievably invaluable, not just in my business life, but in my personal life. So inside of our wealth management firm, we have a vision statement. And our vision statement is that Kuttin Wealth Management is not only a Barron's Hall of Fame practice, but we're known industry-wide as a supercharged leadership development factory. We develop what we call level 5 leaders. So one of the things you'll hear from me a lot about is I believe advisors need to become leaders in order to get to that next level. And I think that's really what we do exceptionally well, is actually help advisors to become leaders, not just of their clients, but ultimately of the folks who work inside of their organizations. The second piece that I would share is some of the interesting pieces. Started as a traditional advisor, got involved in leadership, built my first CPA partnership in 2001. We work as a firm with about 130, maybe closer to 150 now, CPA firms that are professional alliances. So as a firm, we bring several hundred new clients into the practice every year, and those clients ultimately go to the advisors inside of our ecosystem. So part of our value prop is actually providing our advisors with in-segment clients that we've actually built a team that does that sourcing, which our advisors tells us is super valuable. Second interesting piece is in 2002, I did my first practice acquisition. I'm almost embarrassed to say we've done like 75 acquisitions at this point, but we've become really good at mergers, acquisitions, and tuck-ins, and then how to actually help advisors learn how to do that and how to integrate them into the business. And then the last piece that I would share, when I think about our overall trajectory, would be that leadership piece, right? So when you kind of mix a great client experience, a great advisor experience, the ability to provide advisors with clients from CPA partnerships, and then also for mergers and acquisitions, you have a recipe for what I call, in my own podcast, quantum growth. And that's really what we've been doing. So today, we're just shy of about 11 billion of assets under management. We have about 220 people or so in the organization. We're pacing about 88 million of gross revenue. And what's interesting is today, we're a vertical firm, right? So what do I mean when I say a vertical firm? We deliver advice and we deliver client experience the same way throughout the firm. And I can talk a little bit about how that ties in with Ameriprise. In addition to that, when you think about how the organization is actually structured, you think about a holding company. I'm the majority owner. I own about 90% of the holding company. I have a partner, an equity partner. His name is Jake Dunlap. He's a former regional vice president at Ameriprise who owns 10% of the company. That holding company has partnerships with what we call beachhead leaders. And what a beachhead leader is, you can think of it as a regional director, a branch manager, but generally they are somewhere between, call it as small as 500 million and as large as about 1.5 billion. And they run different territories for the organization. So when I think about what we're building, we're really building and have started to build a national firm that has primarily advisors that are either owners that are looking to build large enterprises by leveraging our systems, our processes, our CPA business, our M&A business, our capital structure, and we provide all of that, or advisors who might be less experienced, that don't want all that just want to be a great financial advisor, that want to give great advice, that have that CFP mindset, but don't want to be a business owner, but want the security of a salary and a bonus. And then my last part, and I will pause, Frank, is we've just launched, literally out on social media yesterday, a new affiliation brand, which is new for us. We've kind of dabbled in it, and we're about to really double down on it, that we're calling KWM Wealth Partners. And really what that is a place for advisors of all sizes and shapes where we can create a bespoke model for those advisors, and we can customize their economics, customize what services they'll receive from the firm, and be able to be very flexible on the economics as a way to continue to grow and scale and give them access to the ecosystem that we ultimately built. So I'll pause. I do have a few more things I wanted to add, but I have to give Frank the airtime.
I'm sure you do. That was pretty good, though. I didn't say anything.
Did anybody see a little lip tremor? Was there a couple of? I tried not to pause. I tried to just really go fast.
I was twitching a little bit. Yes. That's okay. It's interesting. You say all that, which is impressive, right? And as I'm looking at you, I'm looking over your shoulder, and Ameriprise Financial is on our sponsors list, right? They were here this week. They brought the whole gang in, which is great, and I think they're a great firm. But a lot of people would be probably surprised that you built this large company under the Ameriprise umbrella, right? Like, how the heck did you do that, right? Because and I'm not saying that they are or not, but there's a perception of it being restrictive and, heavy-handed, but it's a franchise. So what's that like? How did you do it, basically? And you've done it, right? And you continue to do it, and you continue to bring advisors on, and you continue to do creative things. How are you doing it at Ameriprise?
Yeah, so great question, Frank. And I love Ameriprise. Been there almost 30 years, right? So amazing company, great core values. What I would share is a couple things. Being at Ameriprise for 30 years, I remember when all we did was sell 3 mutual funds, right? So it's been a big change. So in my opinion, Ameriprise offers a really unique value proposition as a self-clearing firm when you actually really understand the value of the technology, which I missed Ameriprise's presentation, but my guess is they probably focus some on technology and the scalability of that. Yep. And when I tell you, as a practice, we do about 600 service meetings a week. It's a lot of service meetings. We hit a button and it's done. And it's an amazing deliverable, and it all is one touch through the system. So when you think about the ability to scale a business, and I always look at, when you think about business ownership, period, everybody likes to focus on economics, right? And there's only 2 ways you can make money in business. You can sell more things, or you can charge more for the things you sell. That's it, right? Rate and volume. That's the way every business in the world actually makes money. So when you think about that for a minute, if your economics are not world-class, but they're competitive, I don't think Ameriprise offers the best economics in the industry, certainly not, but I also don't think that they offer the worst. I think they're reasonably competitive. But if your average advisor can do 25 to 30% more productivity because of the scalability of the systems and the processes, at the end of the day, when you think about net income, what you put in your pocket at the end of the day, that to me is what pays the bills. That's what you bring home to your family. And I think when you look at the overall value proposition of the firm, it's quite differentiated in the marketplace. So what I've been able to do is we're almost 3 times the size of the next largest franchise at Ameriprise, is we've been able to really learn how to leverage the ecosystem. And I think one of the reasons we've been very successful in recruiting is because we actually understand the system so well, and we've built processes to create leverage inside of it. So a few of the things that I've found very valuable about Ameriprise. One, there's 10,000 advisors, and it's a pond of advisors that are aging. So therefore, when an Ameriprise advisor looks to exit, generally their successor will be another Ameriprise advisor. If you position yourself well in that marketplace, it's a competitive edge to not have to ACAT accounts from one broker-dealer to another, but to literally be able to hit a button and to watch 200 households, somebody's 30 years life work come over, okay? 2, Ameriprise will help make capital available to advisors. Although I don't personally use that, many advisors do, which is a great advantage to actually play in the M&A space. 3, I would say, would be the combination of the systems, the processes, the technology that we talked about, a real focus on client experience. And then really the differentiator is in 1994, I did financial planning for a living. Nobody else was doing financial planning for a living. And it's become very in vogue that all wealth advisors, what used to be brokers, are now truly comprehensive financial advisors. And I think the way we deliver it and the way we've actually created that client experience is a differentiator, and the systems and technology allow you to do that at scale. As a practice, my business does roughly 15% of its gross revenue, which is about $88 million in gross revenue. Take that back, about 10% of our gross revenue would be more accurate, in just straight advice fees. Fees for the comprehensive advice, the intellectual capital that our advisors actually provide. So
that's something that advisors, that I think is a huge thing that they're missing. So maybe you make your last point, but I want you to come back to that piece, because I would be curious to understand, how do you talk to the financial advisors that affiliate underneath you to have that conversation with their clients? Because most advisors are scared to have that conversation.
Oh yeah, great point, Frank. And here's what I would share, and this is my experience in speaking to advisors that I've recruited from other firms to Ameriprise, and quite frankly, sometimes speaking to an advisor that came to Ameriprise, and I get to meet them 2 or 3 years later at a conference as an example, is it's really hard to understand the culture of a firm. And being at Ameriprise as long as I have, the culture is really differentiated. Okay, because we all started as if we were in a wirehouse, where we were in one big location, where a lot of us worked together. Then this independent model or franchise model created. And then what happened was individual offices were created throughout the country. And it kind of lost a little, right, of that kind of togetherness. So one of the things that I see, Frank, is advisors that make changes from one firm to another don't always get fully incubated into the ecosystem. So I'm talking to a group of advisors and a group of folks that help advisors make smart decisions. If you are an advisor and you're planning to go to a broker-dealer that's independent, most broker-dealers will say they have supported independence, right? That's the tagline that everybody has out there.
That's a new buzzword now.
That's it. And it's true. There's a level of supported independence, but it's usually one consultant to 500 advisors. So what happens is these advisors, as you know, they get recruited into an ecosystem. They're told the value proposition that you all learned about from all the firms today. And then what happens is they go and they recruit the next person. And that person who brought his or her $1 million plus book of business is on an island because they've chosen to become an independent advisor. And they don't necessarily ever get to fully integrate the benefits of the firm that they've joined. So the reason I described our firm as a vertical model, we've built this middle office I call it a middle office. When you think about a middle office, it's usually a term that you think about in the RIA space, right? And a middle office in the RIA space is generally more around a tech stack and picking the right billing software and the right CRM, right? And making sure that the compliance is done correctly. And that's what a lot of folks think about when they think about a service provider. I rely on all that for Ameriprise. So you can look at that as an advantage or a disadvantage. I look at that as an advantage because I don't have a choice. My compliance is done for me. Does that make sense to everybody? My CRM is Salesforce. I don't have any choice in the matter. But what I've found is most of the things that are picked are best in breed. And I don't want to spend my time or my investment into the business in my middle office on those things. I want to invest my profits into things that will help my team grow faster. So inside of our middle office, if our advisors choose, we have 4 CFAs that run our clients' portfolios, done for you at no extra charge. We have a 6-person M&A team that all they do is work on mergers and acquisitions. We have a 5-person CPA team that constantly sources CPAs to ultimately put prospective clients in our advisors' offices. We have an in-house attorney who ran his own law firm for many years. That's an in-house JD that helps our clients with estate and elder care. As an outside business activity, I'm a minority owner in about an $8 million, I should say $8 million in aggregate CPA firm. We have the ability, not necessarily through the practice, but through a partnership, when appropriate, to be able to help clients with tax compliance or tax planning. We have a meeting prep department. I'm going on a little bit here, but I wanted to give everyone the flavor, where all of our advisors' meetings are prepped 2 weeks in advance with an agenda, with recommendations for advice. We have an in-house insurance expert, in fact, 2 of them, that were formerly regional vice presidents that come alongside our advisors and their clients to actually help those advisors ultimately help their clients with their insurance needs, therefore driving additional revenue. So we have approximately 80 advisors in the organization, and I've not named all the resources, by the way. Those resources are just for my advisors. They're not for the whole firm. They're not for 600 advisors at Ameriprise. The advisors on my team get access to the Ameriprise resources, but then they also get access to about $4.5 million of spend that are there to do one thing and one thing only, make their job easy, so that they can sit with their clients, give more comprehensive advice, win more wallet share, do more business with the clients they have, and because of that client experience, get referrals. And we'll keep bringing clients into the ecosystem for them to serve more and more clients. Last thing that I would share, I say that a lot, Frank, don't I? Sorry. Is we just hired somebody who ran the entire advanced planning team for Ameriprise. So when an advisor has an ultra high net worth client that they're looking to land, and you call that special department your corporate office, the person who ran that special department now works inside of our practice, as does somebody who is very instrumental in building the planning department that we now have as well, that was also very instrumental in the overall planning at a national level on Ameriprise. So what we've done, Frank, to answer your question, is we've taken what Ameriprise has done, we've kind of put it on steroids, and we've heavily invested in everything that we know advisors struggle with. We've very intentionally, over the last decade, built processes, systems, and for those of you who are familiar with Dan Sullivan, right, the book Who Not How, we've basically hired who's that are really good at subject matters. And we've said to the advisors, you don't need to worry about that. We'll do it for you. Just take really good care of the clients and work on growing the business.
I'm laughing because it is interesting. I was going to ask you about, how do you get advisors to join you with the economics? Because that can, Ameriprise is a little bit of a pricier platform, but that's okay, right? Price is an issue in the absence of value. And it's one of the reasons why one person buys one car versus another car, right? And so where I was going to go with this was the whole Dan Sullivan, Who Not How. Again, this is why John and I get along so well, because these are the books that I think you actually turned me on to that particular book, but we still follow the same philosophies. And so I think if you're an advisor and you're thinking about, I'm not going to tuck into somebody, which is really want you to maybe talk about how that conversation goes, right? Sure. If you're an advisor and you're thinking about, hey, this sounds great, I don't want to work for John, right? Or, well, if I work for John or if I work underneath Kuttin Wealth Management, I'm going to make less money. But the reality is, percentage-wise, maybe, and the gentleman that was here the other day, here yesterday, was an advisor that left LPL. He wasn't with us, but he left LPL and joined Ameriprise. And he did say, yeah, I make percentage-wise, I make a little bit less money, but I make more money because I was able to grow faster. So when you're sitting with an advisor under your structure, and maybe the conversation is going to change with this new model, maybe you can talk a little bit about that in 19 minutes.
That's one question for me, as you know. Yes, yeah.
I know. So how do you have the conversation if we introduce you to somebody? And by the way, we've had some I'll call it internal affiliations that we've had for you, acquisitions, right, with Ameriprise, and it's gone great. But how do you talk to an advisor that we might introduce to you that's thinking about being independent, and we're saying, hey, listen, forget about the independent thing, go work with Jon Kuttin?
Yeah, so great question. So, Frank talked a little bit about economics, right? So the way the Ameriprise channel works, you could either, on the independent side, you could affiliate as a franchise owner or as an associate advisor, which really means you're an advisor who works inside of somebody else's franchise. So I am a franchise owner. Because of our size and scale, we get the very best economics that Ameriprise offers. So as you as an advisor are looking, everybody goes to, well, what will my payout be? What will my fees be on administrative fees for fee-based assets, global administrative fees? A couple of you asked me about that in the audience before. So I qualify for the highest payout rate and the largest discount. So anyone who joins my franchise, affiliates with my firm, gets the economics that I get. Okay? So when you just think about it in those terms, Frank, that's a big differentiator and can mean as much as 10, 15, 20% additional gross take-home pay just because of the way that they're affiliating, coming direct to me as opposed to directly. And there's pros and cons of that as to how independent you are, so on, et cetera. I think that the second piece of the question, Frank, would be the way I think about the advisors that we look to attract. I put them in 3 buckets. The first bucket, I would call it a CFP candidate. So one of the places we've had a ton of success, everyone likes to talk about, I only want $1 million producers or $2 million producers or $3 million producers. What we're really good at is developing talent and helping people get what they want for themselves. So there's an acronym that is part of the Ameriprise system from a guy named Doug Lennox, who works for a company called Think to Perform. Brilliant, a mentor of mine. And it's called the Woody Woofy process. And there's some folks here who are whispering it to me. And what it stands for is, what do you want for yourself? So think about an advisor sitting in a bank today. He or she's got 80 or 100 million of AUM. They're doing 500,000 of revenue. We know when they leave the bank, they'll probably move half. So they're going to wind up bringing 40 million and 250,000 of revenue. But on the 500,000 of revenue, they were making $150,000. They don't like working for the bank anymore. They want more. Sound familiar? That advisor can come join my team. We'll plug them into a business of ideal clients, get them to 100 to 150 million of AUM. And because they were able to bring a couple 100,000 of production with them, they'll likely be able to get themselves to a point that they get their net income to $300,000 to $350,000. Now, why does that work? They brought some assets with them. My biggest need is we bring in more clients and acquire more practices than we have advisors to serve. Right? Now, what does that advisor want? Not everyone wants to be the CEO and make $1 million a year. A lot of advisors don't want to check their phone on the weekend, don't want to work until 9 o'clock at night, don't want to worry about when their next client's coming in. They want to enjoy their family, they want to enjoy their life, and they want to check out at 5 o'clock and be done. We love that. And we'll put someone in business, they'll have an amazing life, and we can put $1.5 million of revenue on them, pay them $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year, and ultimately get to a spot that it's a win-win for everybody. Everybody's happy. They hit their woody woofy. What do you want for yourself? Okay. Second type of advisor is what I would call a future beachhead leader. So this is someone who wants to grow a great big business. She or he wants equity. They understand equity. They want to grow. They want to make $1 million a year. They want to have a big exit one day. Well, that's a person that right now is probably a really good advisor. She or he might be $1 million or $2 million producer, but they don't know the steps that you have to actually connect in order to go from being an advisor to being a leader. We have a system and a process and are really good at teaching that. So I'll tell you a quick story of an advisor on my team whose name is Jason Ice. Jason joined us about 4 years ago. He was an ex-Ameriprise advisor, went to what became Avantax, built about a $900,000 business at Avantax, came back, super successful transition about 4 years ago, brought roughly the whole $900,000 of revenue over. Super smart guy. Fast forward 4 years later, Jason's got a team of 4 advisors. He'll do around $5 million in revenue this year. His equity went through the roof. And all we did was we built CPA partnerships for Jason. We recruited advisors on Jason's team. We put those advisors through our ongoing training and development program, and we sourced 4 or 5 small acquisitions for him and a couple of recruits. And his job is to onboard it, lead it, build the culture. But Jason's net worth is probably, first of all, he didn't have equity when he came over. So he unlocked equity. We provided all of the capital. Right, so one of the things I share is we are a very profitable company because we're vertical. We have access to nearly $100 million of capital to make investments in the business, and we actually put that capital out for our beachhead leaders. So Jason isn't writing checks. I'm writing checks, and my partner Jake are writing checks. We're leveraging the equity of the business through debt. And what we're then doing is we're having the profits of the business that Jason is in charge of running for the organization pay back that note. Does that make sense to everybody? Yep. So when you think about how advisors make money, we all know this in this room and our listeners, it's a combination of income and equity. So what we're really good at is for the right person, they have to have the right DNA and mindset and be the cultural fit and want to become a leader. Ties back to Kuttin Wealth Management, not only a Barron's Hall of Fame practice, but we're known industry-wide as a supercharged leadership development factory. We develop level 5 leaders. If someone wants to be a leader and run a big organization, we can help them create 8 figures worth of equity in the ecosystem without having to take enormous risks, which most people, when push comes to shove, won't do. They won't write the check. They won't take the loan. They won't take those risks. We'll take the risks for them because we've done it enough and truly understand it. Third avatar, Frank, and there's 4, mind you. Third avatar is what I would just call straight succession. Okay, so it's an advisor who wants to double monetize. They want to come to a broker-dealer, they want to get paid to move their book, and then they want us to actually acquire them at a reasonable price. We love to do that. So I'll give you a perfect situation we're working on right now. Won't use the name because it's out there and active. $1.5 billion, and they're not all that big, by the way. We love $100 million, $200 million, you name it. But this happens to be a $1.5 billion firm on the independent side, $8.5 million in revenue, about $3.5 million of EBITDA. Founders 70, 2 founders, both 50-50, one 70, other is late 50s. 70-year-old wants out in the next year or 2. Late 50s gentleman wants to be out in the next 3 or 4 years. What we were able to orchestrate there, and this is where it gets creative, is we could use Ameriprise's transition capital to move the book of business over, okay? So they get monetization. And then we're able to buy a piece of the business on a multiple of EBITDA, just like everybody else does in the industry. And on that first tranche of capital, they're winding up, they will, if they say yes, going to get an unbelievable monetization event on the first tranche, right? Like private equity level deals, but with us. And then ultimately, the next two tranches will actually help them grow the business. And generally, our advisors grow fast. Our CAGR is pretty darn good in the business. And then at an agreed upon multiple, we will, as a matter of contract, buy the next two tranches of their business. We'll buy, say, a third up front, a third in 2 years, and the final 2 years later as an example. So we can be very bespoke and very just flexible. And it's funny, Frank and I were talking before. And I just said to Frank, and you guys all know this better than I do, and this is what I think is great about what you are doing today, is this is an easy game, right? It's really hard. What's that saying? Really simple, but really hard, right? The advisor that you're talking with, they have a need. Otherwise, they won't be talking to you. They're looking for something. The key is, how good could you be at solving the problem? How many tools do you have in your toolbox? Because at the end of the day, an advisor built his or her business over 20, 30, 40 years. They deserve to get paid really well. They deserve to take the risk because they don't have to make the change. And it's really about how can you orchestrate that and understand what the other person you're dealing with is actually looking for. And one of the things I take a lot of pride in is I get involved in really all of our M&A at some point in the process, usually after at least the first meeting. And I'm pretty good at understanding what that person is looking for. Last piece, KWM Wealth Partners. So like I said, new to us, but we wanted to have a affiliation option where an advisor will use the KWM Wealth Partners names, don't have a ton of flexibility with name, okay? So Kuttin Wealth is our vertical business. KWM Wealth Partners is our affiliation business, and that is a ability to bring an advisor in, utilize Ameriprise's capital as a recruiting bonus to bring them to Ameriprise and to our team, get our payout rate, the best Ameriprise offers, which is really hard to get our global admin fee, which to my knowledge, we're the only firm in Ameriprise that actually gets that level of discount. There might be one other. So they get the best economics Ameriprise will offer, and then all of those resources I talked about before to help them grow are there. And then once they're there, they may choose to stay in that model forever. But man, if we find an acquisition and they'd like to do it and they'd like to use our capital and we need the people power to get the deal done, because when Jason Ice came over, the example I gave, he wanted to just run his own show. And then all of a sudden an acquisition presented itself. I said, hey, Jason, you want to do this together? You want to put the money in? No. Okay, well, how about if I put the money in? How can we restructure it? Right? He made more money. He built more equity. We were able to build the firm, and it kind of helps us get to where we're looking to get long term.
So what's the difference between, so that model, what's the biggest significant difference between the Kuttin Wealth Management model and the new model?
Yep.
Is it an ownership thing? Do they have their own franchise agreement?
It's not an own franchise agreement. It's going to be independent or W-2. So if the advisor would like benefits, we're happy to give them benefits. If the advisor has their own benefits or chooses to pay it on their own, like to be paid on a 1099, they can choose the 1099 affiliation model. And then ultimately, it's no different than joining a business independently. It's a payout rate. It's a level of services that are negotiated, and ultimately, it's the advisor will have a smorgasbord, for lack of a better word, of choices, and they can choose what they would like to utilize from the firm and what they might not. So when I say it's not vertical, if they'd like to run their own money, they can run their own money. If they don't want to do comprehensive financial planning, we would prefer they do. They don't need to do comprehensive financial planning, as an example. If they want to use stocks in their portfolios and not ETFs and mutual funds, it's complete flexibility with the exception of name, and we can get really competitive from a compensation perspective.
Okay. So what I would say, and one of the things I always find interesting with Jon, and even more interesting that you're doing all of this stuff on the Ameriprise platform, in the Ameriprise ecosystem, which, is a little bit more of a box, right? Is how creative you can be and how dynamic you are in thinking about stuff. I can tell you that having a professional relationship with Jon and a friendship with Jon, he's always, almost sometimes a little bit overwhelming, always coming up with new ideas. Like, he's always thinking. And so if you're an advisor, or to my team, if you're working with an advisor that's looking for something more dynamic, right? We ask that question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I literally asked that question to an advisor, a large advisor, not sure it's going to work out for them. But his answer was, and you know him, his answer was, Jon. Meaning, what do you want me to grow up? Jon. Because unbeknownst to me, when I started talking with him, he drives by Jon's office every single day to the office and sees Jon's office.
Now I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I wasn't sure you were talking about first. Yep.
And so having a resource and and if you're an advisor that's thinking about making a move, you have an obligation to your clients to find the right firm. You also have an obligation to your family, right? So I say three things. If you're an advisor and you're thinking about making a move, you have to say yes to three questions in this order. Number one, is the new firm I'm going to be better for my clients, right? And that means different things to different advisors and different clients. Is it going to be better for my clients? Number two, is the new firm going to be better for my practice? And that, again, means different things to different people, but you got to say yes to it. And then number three, is the new firm and me going to the new firm going to be better for me and my family? And whatever that means, it's not always a money thing, right? Part of it is an economic thing, but part of it is a stability thing. Part of it is a growth thing, which is a money thing, but it could be it's the who, not how thing, right? Jon and Jon's team and Kuttin Wealth Management solves a lot of those problems, gets you to answer yes to all of those things. So that's why you need to be considering that. And like our previous podcast, if you're an advisor making a move, you may not, I know everyone knows Jon, right? You think everyone knows Jon. But if you're an advisor, you may not look at Kuttin Wealth Management and think Ameriprise, right? And you might hear, oh, Ameriprise, I don't want to go to Ameriprise for whatever reason. Not understanding the valuable resource and opportunity that there is right underneath your nose. And that's where we come along and make sure that we can have you need to at least have a conversation. And a lot of times we have those conversations and it goes very well for the advisor. They go, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I look at Ameriprise, and I think most independent advisors look at their BD, if they're with a BD, just as it's where they clear. It's where they do their business. It's where they get their resources. And like I said, I'm very grateful to Ameriprise, and I've had amazing leaders and love the culture, and can't say enough about it. I wouldn't be the man I am without my upbringing there. So I'm a very loyal person, and I owe a lot of my success there. But with that being said, we have our own organization. It's our enterprise. We are doing things that are different, and the reality of it is the chassis is strong. The chassis that Ameriprise provides is strong, and it's unbelievably leverageable. And I don't have to think at all, ever, about technology. I don't need to think at all about, we always have to think about compliance, but about my compliance team. I have a compliance team, right? I don't need to think at all about my website. It's done, right? And you could look at that as a disadvantage, or you can look at that as an advantage. What I believe is the truth of the matter is, and I think this is a really, hopefully the most important point that I hope to make today, is advisors are looking to make a change based on ease. How do I make a change where I'll make more money to not necessarily do more? Do you guys agree with that as a group, right? That's what most advisors are looking for. The value proposition that I think we provide and that we attempt to provide is to actually help advisors become better leaders, become better advisors, become better business people. And therefore, because that's what's controllable, the economics take care of itself. Goes back to that rate times volume conversation that we spoke about before. And what I'm most proud of, so we have a leadership coach for the whole organization. I mean, as a firm, we spend well in excess of six figures that provides leadership development and coaching for the entire organization. I meet with my coach on a weekly basis. And my theme for my next decade is how do I help go myself from success to significance? And when I think about the difference between success and significance, I truly try to be a leader that's a servant leader. That my job, I've gotten my accolades. P.S. I don't like accolades. If you haven't figured that out, I don't like, standing in front of a room. I can talk, obviously, but at the end of the day, I want to make a difference in the people in my organization's life, and the way you actually do that is you help them change, right? And that's why Frank and I align really well. Is Frank's a visionary guy. Frank's a leadership guy. Frank's trying to figure out how to motivate and tap inside of the best in each and every one of the consultants here today, and he wants it for the advisors that you all help in their journey as well. And I think that's why we align, because we're lifetime learners. And I know I came from a 20-year-old that came from a family that claimed bankruptcy to building a business that will hopefully do almost $90 million in revenue this year with over a 40% profit margin. That was because of the mentors I met throughout my life. It's because of the books I read. It's because of the podcasts I listened to. It's because of the people I surrounded myself with. And that, to me, when you think about an advisor and where the best spot for he or she is, man, if they could be part of that ecosystem, that's where the magic happens. The magic doesn't happen because one BD is paying you 93% and one's giving you 90, or one's global admin fee is 12 bips and one is 4, or someone's going to give you a 200% deal up front and someone's going to give you a 160 deal up front. At the end of the day, that's good for a point in time. But if an advisor wants to build a significant business, significant wealth, make a significant impact, it's about the people they work with, the ecosystem they're in, and do they get better every day? Because I could tell you this, and then I'll shut up, is there's not a lot of firms out there that do the work that you all do, that are sitting in a ballroom for 3 days, having their leader try to teach and persuade and educate so that you all could be better at what you do. And that's honestly why I'm about to sit in 4 hours of traffic driving home, because I think Frank is that guy, and I think you guys have a great person at the helm leading your firm. So,
well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So we're going to end on a high note, certainly a high note. We started on a high note, but that's a great high note. So thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it. For those of you that are listening, watching on YouTube, thanks for joining us. If somebody's interested in learning more about Kuttin Wealth Management and all the affiliation options, what's the best way to go do that, aside from calling me or emailing me at frank@eliteconsultingpartners.com? But what's the best way to go about doing it?
Yeah, you have to call Frank, evidently. I have no phone number. No, if you just Google me, I mean, it's easy, but it's Jonathan, JONATHAN .S as in Sam .Kuttin, KUTTIN @ampf.com. Also, I've got a great podcast for financial advisors called Quantum Growth for Financial Advisors, which I'll probably play this on as well.
That's actually where we first started working together. We're like, hey, let's try this podcast thing. We didn't even really know each other that well. Yeah. And we're like, totally went off the rails and down rabbit holes. And we're like, this is awesome.
2 hours later, and we're like, hey, we should be friends. And here we are. Exactly right. And then also Frank and I co-founded a completely free community that's called the Financial Advisor Success Syndicate as well, which you can go to at join www. There's 3 W's, right? Not 4? Did they change the 4 yet? Yep, just 3? 3 W's. joinfass.com. Free, tons of content. We've got some other thought leaders in the industry in there, and advisors are loving it. And I think we have 500 advisors.
Yeah, that's the whole pay it forward thing, right? We don't charge for it. And we were talking about it earlier this week, because we felt, we get on we talk and we get on these tangents and down these rabbit holes. And one of them was, there's no place because we share each other. Well, listen to this podcast, or I just listened to this podcast, right? And in our space, there really is nothing where advisors can go to learn about be an advisor, not like investment management and what stocks are you buying, about being a professional in the financial services industry. And so we're like, we should do something.
Yeah, it's the business of being a financial advisor, really, is what it is. It's how to build that business.
It's great. So join FASS.com. Jon, it's been an honor. I love seeing you here. I love actually seeing you in a jacket. It's great. Maybe
for you, the jacket, I don't know. A little tight. It fit a little better last time.
Anyway, thanks for joining us, and thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. If you're looking for more advice or solutions on any topics in the financial services industry, or you just want to subscribe to our podcast, head on over to eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcasts.